Good afternoon, YouTube. Hello, my name is Greg from GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. I'm a tutor in New York City, and I did a YouTube a couple days ago pertaining to the impact of the coronavirus on standardized testing as a whole, and I tried to use some examples of what's been happening as the month has gone past March and April, and how the college testing situation is reacting to that. So this one I want to focus more on the high schools, in particular SHSAT, and I'll talk about all of them together as well. So this is part two. That conversation, the other conversation is more broad. This one we're going to tend to be more specific. So the question really comes down to what's going to happen. The SHSAT is normally around Halloween time. And given that's the case, and school is kind of messed up at the moment, what's going to be going on from that point? So what I'm going to do is lay out a few scenarios, particularly about the SHSAT, and then we're going to talk about some of the other schools. But just kind of to cut through it a bit, they're all going to be involved in the same spiel. So I'm really going to use the SHSAT as the model and get specific about it. But some of the other tests won't have the same specifics, but we're going to be talking about some similar things. Okay? So the first scenario I'd like to cover is that the SHSAT is removed. Now, some of you may know that the mayor and the chancellor wanted to do this already for a while now, and this may be their opportunity to do that. There's a couple of concerns here that even if they were correct, I personally disagree with them, and I think the issue is very deep and challenging and really complex to resolve. But there's a few additional things added on, which is that schools are closed, which means kids not learning right now, or they're learning in a substandard way at the moment. The second thing is grade inflation is already rampant, and that was one of the major problems to removing the SHSAT. In fact, I don't know if some of you know, there's actually legal cases proceeding about that, with the FBI involved and other things like that, where grade inflation and so on is messed up. Just to give a good example of what I'm even talking about, there's some examples where kids literally fail the state test and so on, and they still can get 95 and 99 on their report cards, say in math, and that's absurd. So if that's the case, if you can get 99 on his math report card as an example, and not know math at all, how can that be used as a guide into entry into the specialized high schools, or anything for that matter? So the mayor wanted to use 7%, the top 7% of each school, and the question is, what does that even mean? So I don't want to get too deep into that right now, but that's some of the issues that, on top of it, the state test accounts, so kids maybe started preparing for them, and they just probably abandoned that at this point. Same for the regions. The regions were canceled and are not even being used as the requirement for graduation. The graduation requirements to graduate as a senior from high school have been changed. And furthermore, Chancellor Karand has been quoted as making a statement that we should just grade them on a pass-fail basis. And if that's true, he's saying whether they master the material or not, it seems that there's a status quo kind of establishing right now that grades are really not going to be given in June. And if they are, they're just not going to be meaningful. They're going to be gibberish. So with that and tied in with everything in politics and the whole virus situation, removing the SHSAT means there's really no entry into the specialized schools. So in the past, you could even argue about the report cards. Now, with everything just all over the place, it's really kind of a meaningless thing. And we need something meaningful, okay? So option number one is on the table. It could certainly be removed. But the question is, then what? What happens to those schools? What happens to the kids already there? Will there be no freshman class entering in? So this is, as you can see, is a complicated issue with lots of pieces and things that need to be put together. The other scenario, which is kind of a tenet of this, is just to keep the test for Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. They were the original three testing schools, and Mayor Bloomberg added on 5 or 6 more or whatever. So, because I mentioned this because there's some argument that the state mandated that the original 3 had this, and when Bloomberg added on the other ones, the question is whether they have to follow those rules or not. Even if it's determined that they don't have to follow those, the question is we still have Stuyvesant, Science, and Tech. stuck in the middle of that. So it's not quite a solution here. All right. So we're still stuck with what impact is this virus going to have on this test and entry into the schools. Um, Another thing is, let's just wait this out. Let's see what happens. By the time Halloween time comes around, things might be back to normal. Okay? But there's still a couple of problems here. One is that even if we can get back to normal in terms of the virus being, able to be controlled, there's some miracle cure, there's a vaccine, very few people getting it, school resumes. The kids still only got about 6/10 of their 60% of their schooling done this year. And what about the other 40%? And what the heck, why don't we just say they only got 50% just to make the numbers easier? There's also the issue of what's going to happen in September. Is school really going to start? And if school starts, will it be in split sessions? Will who knows what, right? The other thing is if things do go well in terms of the virus, then what happens? Do we still have testing scenarios where 10,000 kids are going to take a test at one school at one time? Not 10,000, but 1,000 could. The testing quantity of students at Brooklyn Tech was enormous, and there was a morning session and an afternoon session. How were schools cleaned under conditions like that to have the next group of kids come in and so on? So even if things get back to normal, will there be more test dates? Will there be more testing locations? So there's a lot of issues on the table here that kind of start getting confusing and so on. All right. The third scenario, which is that testing happens on the original dates, but happens online only. It doesn't happen in a physical location in person. How will this work? At first, you're like, oh my God, that sounds totally whacked out. That's too involved. But if you go to part one of this two videos, and this is part two, you'll see that I laid out a bunch of issues that the colleges are doing. For instance, it's online only. They made the test have less questions. They made the test shorter. Instead of multiple choice, they're making it open-ended. It's also open book. It's going to be probably packed enough that the timing is that if you start trying to Google answers or try to look them up in your notes or something, you're going to end up wasting time. Because these tests were already paced where you really had to answer a question every 1.5 minutes or so on. All right, so there's a lot of issues here. But on the flip side, doing this online, it's doable. There's a whole bunch of tests now that are going to be online that were not online previously. They were done on paper at testing locations. And this all happened in 3, 4, 5 weeks. So the College Board and other groups were able to get their act together and figure this out in that short amount of time. And the truth of the matter is that some of these tests were already available online. So all they had to do is strengthen up maybe some parts of it and make a few modifications here and there. In some cases, they made modifications a lot. So if you have a test that had multiple choice and remove it multiple choice, make it open-ended, that's a big change. But they're still trying to keep the essence of some of these tests. So in the case of what I'm talking about, these are for younger children. These are not college-bound kids who have more discipline and more mature and their brain has developed further. But it's still doable. It's still doable online. And there's a way to figure some of this out. The DOE themselves have already administered things like the state test online. Okay? So they have their own past practice to use as a roadmap. And they also have the current thing that the College Board and the other groups are doing to do the college test, the college entry test online. So that's all there. They don't need to figure some of this out. And they can almost hunt and peck the parts they want out of it. Okay? So this is doable. It's doable online. Is it going to be perfect? No, it wasn't perfect on paper. So we're not trying to strive for perfection. We're just trying to strive for something pragmatically reasonable. Okay, and with that as the criteria, this can be done and done well. It can be done as well as the paper versions are done. So that's a good thing, because originally, oh my God, what the hell is going to happen? Well, there's light at the end of the tunnel here, and it's not too bad a lit up picture. Okay. On the same note, how about we have SHSAT Day? How about we have SHSAT Day from now on? One day during the school day, and the criteria means school has to resume, that during school, one day is allocated as SHSAT Day, so that all 8th graders, and in the case of the 9th graders, but let's just stick with 8th graders, all 8th graders take the SHSAT. And if you want to, you can opt out. Okay? In fact, this is already done with the PSAT and the SAT. New York City every year, for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years now, has had a PSAT day and an SAT day. It's the same day, because normally you're at different grades taking it. And that you just, when you're in high school, it's normally during March that happens. In fact, it was canceled because school was closed. So PSAT and SAT never happened. This also already happens when high school students take AP classes and they have to take the AP exam. There's an AP day for each different test, just like when they take finals. In fact, there was already an SHSAT day at some middle schools. So there's nothing inherently wrong with doing it at all middle schools. Okay? And again, this already happened. Last year, it happened to 55 middle schools. That's a lot of schools. You could argue, well, there's a lot more than 55 middle schools. Big deal. This is doable. This really is doable. And there's nothing wrong with making this a school-wide, city-wide thing for New York City. In fact, some groups have asked the mayor and the chancellor to do exactly this. Furthermore, they were going to fund it and pay for tutoring. And the mayor and the chancellor told them no. This is probably an opportunity for something like that to pop back up again. Because we have the issue where kids are only getting 50% of their school year done here. So you could argue, how can they take the test on Halloween time and still know all the material? Okay? The answer is probably enough kids won't. Will there be any kid who will know the material? Yes. Yes, and I'm going to get to that in a second. And I got to that in the previous video. You should be studying and prepping right now already. So that's really the punchline here. You should be doing that already so that whenever the test ends up being, that you're ready and prepared for it. Okay? There's another thing they can do, which is make the SHSAT in 2021. Don't make it on Halloween. There's normally about 6 SHSAT test days, and they range from a couple days before Halloween to maybe mid-November, depending on whether you're doing grade 8, grade 9, you have special accommodations, and which day you pick. There's normally 2 weekends, and so it ends up spanning out in addition to the SHSAT day. So there's a whole bunch of different days that it was happening on. So it already happened multiple times, which is a logistical nightmare for the DOE to take care of. In fact, if it happened on a SHSAT day, as I said in part 5, then a lot of that diversity initiatives would need to happen. Really, all that would need to be done was a makeup day. There would be SHSAT day and then SHSAT makeup day, and that's it. Okay, it doesn't need to be as more involved than that. In fact, given that things like the Regents and the New York State test, they get graded the next day. In 24 hours, most of the New York City, which is really a New York State test, most of the New York State test, whether it's a grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or a Regents test, the scores are posted. We know the scores for Regents are posted because they're part of what your report card is going to be when you graduate as a senior. Okay? So there's no, let's say it's 48 hours, it's not even 24 hours. And all grade level tests are also graded within 48 hours. You may not realize that because you don't get the grades till the October after that. It takes the New York State months and months and months to have the grades released. But many of you don't know the principals get the tentative scores a couple of days afterwards. And they also get the scores in August as well. And then they're finally not released to the parents months and months and months later. A lot of silliness that happens. So there's no reason. Also, anybody who knows, maybe you've had a child or a sibling who's taken the SAT or something. It doesn't take 6 months to get your SAT score. These are all computerized. Certainly the parts that have bubbles. If it's a multiple choice test and it's a Scantron, this is a no-brainer. It's totally a no-brainer. And the only issue is if your bubble sheet is messed up in some manner. Okay, there's different things that do need to happen to ensure the integrity of the test, and what happens if they realize there's a problem with question number 5 and all these kind of things like that. But this has happened for decades now. This is not anything new, and it's something that the DOE and the state are all familiar with. And something like the SHSAT should work the same way. So there's technically no reason why scores can't be released in 48 hours after taking the test. Now, the DOE uses third-party companies to do some of this, But the truth of the matter is they use third-party companies to do some of the other parts of some of the other stuff too. So this is all silly. It really is all silly. They also use staff members for part of it too. In other words, teachers will grade your grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 test. Your test from your school goes to another school, and teachers move different ways. So that way they're not scoring their own students. And there's no reason something like that can't happen with the SHSAT. But since it's all computerized, it just all needs to be put through a Scantron situation. And it all fed into one location. It's really silly, really silly. So I'm not saying there's no logistical issues here at all. There are some, but this is 2020. This is possible. This isn't an impossible task. We got to the moon. We send things into this solar system. We've solved complex things. We're going to solve this COVID-19 issue, and we can't figure out how to grade a test. Okay, so that's no good. My point here is that maybe the SHSAT can happen as late as March, or let's say January or February, and still be graded in enough time when around mid-March, when the high school reports offers are made. There's enough time here. There's way enough time here. Even using a third-party company and even coordinating a different way than they were doing it in the past decades. This is all possible. It's all doable. All right. So, and it could be a combo of things. Maybe it's an online test taken at school on SHSAT day in the end of February, right? And by delaying the test. So if it went from Halloween October, we have all November, all December, all January, and maybe all February rather. That's the 4 months they just missed now. So if it's delayed 3 or 4 months, then everybody technically is caught back up. Okay, I know it's an imperfect world, and I'm doing kind of back of the envelope math on some of this. And back of the envelope math, I'm just making estimations. So you could argue, well, maybe they're only 2 months ahead. Well, it's better than where they are today. All right, so something has to kind of give here, and in the issue of trying to create a wiggle room buffer, maybe that's what needs to happen and be done. All right, so it's all doable. I also say to let the students make up the state tests that they miss and also the regions. And there's 2 reasons I say that. There's at least 2 reasons. One reason is that some children actually want to have taken the state test and taken the regions. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, it doesn't matter, and it's waived, and your score is not impacted in any way from that. It's another to say, well, you know what, I want to move on to the next level, and I want to be a strong student. And one of the ways to do that is to test yourself. Okay, and so maybe the scores won't count. But I still think they should let a student take the state test. Because if you can't do well on the state test, you're not going to do well on the regions. If you can't do well on the regions or a state test, you're not going to do well on the SHSAT. And it gives a kind of a line in the sand, because you need to know your fundamentals and your insights and your core material. And this kind of puts a snapshot in that. Okay. On the flip side, you already can do this, because previous regions and previous state tests, they're available. In fact, as a tutor, that's one thing I use to help some of my SHSAT kids. I use the New York State test as one of the things. I use some other things too, because it's the fundamental aspects of it. The SHSAT is not the same as the state test, but it's going to use the underlying issues there. The state test is measuring your knowledge of what was taught in the classroom. The SHSAT is not just doing that. SHSAT has other aspects to it as well. But if you don't know what's going on in the classroom, you can't do the other parts. If it's talking about exponents and you want to know how to add up exponents or something, you need to know that core stuff. Okay? If there's a question involving exponents on the SHSAT, that's not asking you that directly, but indirectly in solving the word problem or something, you still need to do that. Then you still need to know that core stuff. It's still rock solid. You must be a master of all that material to move on to the next step, which is the SHSAT concerns. Okay? So I think there should be an option. So this is kind of a sidebar comment number 6, that should be allowed to happen. So just to kind of put a line in the sand here. So if the SHSAT was online, or school resumes and it could be a SHSAT day, and it could be later, and it could be maybe even other additions. You know, the SHSAT was never perfect, and maybe it's time this is an opportunity for the SHSAT to be enhanced in various ways to have that addition made onto it. Okay? So, and other tests are involved here too, like the ISEE and the SSAT, which are for private schools. Um, those are normally in March and April. Those have been delayed. So maybe those are happen more often than SHSAT. They have a few ISEEs and a few SSATs over the year. Um, the TACHS, which is the test for admission to Catholic high schools, the CHSEE, the Catholic High School Entrance Exam, and the HSPT, I don't know, I don't remember what that is. Those are all Catholic, used for Catholic schools in the tri-state area for entry. Those also happen in the fall. But it's the same issue. Those grades don't need to be released for months after that. So there's no reason why the TACS can't be delayed. The ISE and the SAT happen multiple times a year, and they're also being leapfrogged. Okay, the Bergen County Academy test, the BCA there, that normally happens close. There's a couple splits off of it, closer around Christmas time and in January time. And then there's the Hunter College High School test, which also happens in January. So some of these are already being delayed, or normally would be in 2021 anyway. Okay, the Hunter College High School test has its own unique aspects, which is that there's a vetting process that happens, which normally that vetting process is that you have to get a certain score in the English and in the math on the New York State test. So since there's no New York State test, what is the vetting process going to be? Okay, and that's another reason why number 6 maybe should be in case that if those kids can actually take the state test, they can actually get a state test score and then be part of the vetting process. Okay, there's another side issue, which is that if you went to a private school where you didn't take the New York State tests, or maybe you live in California and you're moving into New York, this is from the Hunter College High School test only, then you could also take some commercial tests like Terra Nova, but Terra Nova has the same issue as all the rest of these. It's being delayed. So there's a domino and a cascade effect going on with all this, that there's a few levels up. Hunter even has his own qualifying exam, which you can take on the special permission cases. And if you vet through their qualifying exam, then you can take the real exam. But it has the same issue. If we're still doing social distancing at that point, then they also have to work out how to do that online, which probably means all the kids are going to do online. And then that kind of doesn't make sense that all the kids are going to do a qualifying exam and then all the kids are going to do the other test. I don't know. It's hard to say here, really. All right. And Hunter still has to work that out. And I'm trying to second guess a lot of what's going on here. And I'm just throwing out ideas to show you that this is not the end of the world, that there's going to be ways around a lot of this stuff. And are there issues on the table? Yes. Is it going to be perfect? Yes. But there's always issues on the table, and it's always imperfect. So, all right. So you might ask, well, Greg, what if they do make the test different? What if they change its format? Well, there's two answers to that too. The first is that math is still math. Grade 7 math is still grade 7 math. Grade 8 math is still grade 8 math. Grade 9 math is still grade 9 math. Same for the English. English grade 7, it's still English grade 7. Okay? On the flip side, there's a counter to that, is that it can matter. Let's say you're really good on multiple choice tests, but you're not good on open-ended tests. So that wouldn't work out for you. There's a kid who might be flipped, who's horrible on multiple choice, but great on open-ended tests. So it turns out the format, even though math is still math and English is still English, the format can matter. And it comes down to skills and purpose and some other things. All right? So that's part of what you need to work out. Don't buy into the situation that this is impossible and so on. There's ways around this. Remember, as much as a standardized test or other issues like that, an audition, whatever it is, as much as it's about the topic, like math or English or theater or whatever the case may be, as much as it's about that, it's also about what's happening in your brain. You want to think out of the box, and you also want to be in control. So as much as this is about math and English, it's also about the psychology of how to approach things. These high schools are very rigorous that we're talking about here. And if you can't get through this test, you're not going to get through 4 or 5 years of these high schools. Okay, in the case of Hunter College High School, it's more than 4 years. Okay, So you need to be in the right psychological mindset to do this. And you can't do, well, what if this, what if this, what if this, what if this, what is that? That's just being a worrywart, and you're just going to destroy yourself. It's a demeaning process. Mark Cuban, the well-known billionaire, he owns a basketball team and a whole bunch of other stuff. He's on Shark Tank. He tweeted the other day, the one thing in life you control is your effort. Okay, and this is something that comes up. I mentioned it in the first video, the part one of this, was that so many kids, especially halfway through, they start getting jittery. Oh, what if we're late? What if there's some topics that I don't know? Just do what you can do, and do what you can do well. So on test day, because we're only halfway through, when you finally get to there on test day, you're ready. You're ready, and even if you run into a hard problem, you just skip it and you'll be content because you can do the. If there's 100 questions and one's hard, well, you work on the 99 that you know how to do. And then if you have extra time, you come back and do the extra one. If you can stop freaking out, if you can stop panicking, all these other things like that, you're not in control. And being in control of something like this is important, especially, and just backing off of this whole thing more abstractly, the whole thing about the virus. One of the issues of the virus is we can't control our lives right now. It's controlling us. Okay, we need to table flip that. And you can do it. You can do it. You know, if the College Board and all the GRE and the LSAT and all these other companies said, oh my God, we just going to keep delaying the test forever, that's not a solution. We're better than that. We're smarter than that. We're able to solve things. Okay. So I talked about some of this yesterday. What can you do? Well, why don't you start prepping now? It's just that simple. If the coronavirus didn't happen, I was already starting to get students when it hit. This is the season to do this. This is the time to start prepping for this test. And for the others I mentioned, the ISEE, the SSAT, the Hunter College High School test, the Catholic High School entry test as well. Okay, so preparing for a high school admissions test, it's got its own chores, its own burdens. Okay, so just use this as an opportunity. Again, you're in control of this. Use this situation as an opportunity, whether school resumes or not. These schools are going to exist at some point. They're going to they're going to admit freshmen through some mechanism or another. So if you don't prepare, you're messed up. So you might say, well, what if they change the format? How do we know what I'm doing? Yada, yada, yada. That's starting to freak out again. You have to stick with what you know. What you know is what they did in the past. Okay, and there's a good shot that what they did in the past is what's going to happen. If it's not what's going to happen, like I said earlier, math is still math and English is still English, and you still need to know the cores and the fundamentals, right? Going back to the state test and all this other stuff, you'll still need to excel in your classes to be able to pass a lot of these tests and what they're looking for. They're looking for certain things. They're not looking for certain things. They're looking for certain things, and they're also not looking for certain things. So what you have to do is figure out what they're looking for, because they're still going to keep the essence of that, right? They're not going to ask you to add 1 + 1 here. It's still going to be the essence and the spirit of what they've been doing for decades now. They're not going to just all of a sudden throw that out the window and have something else. So you need to be ready for this. And this is true of any emergency, by the way, too, but it's also true when it's not an emergency. But you can't prepare for every emergency because you don't know where the emergency is going to wander. You can have a game plan, though. So that's what we're talking about here. Have a game plan, which means you should be starting to consider what you're going to do, what high school you want to go into, what high school you don't want to do, what are your plans. That's what D here is about. Weigh the importance of what you're doing here. Do you really want to go to a specialized high school? Do you just want to take your test for the fun of it? Okay. There's also other things like the schools like Beacon and Bard, Anderson, Nest M. The list goes on. Baccalaureate, which have their own interviews, their own tests and stuff like that, which are not related to the specialized test or any of the tests I mentioned before. It's a per school test. So those also have concerns. And really the state test is the line in the sand for them as well, which is another reason to allow the state test. So it's not just the Hunter College test. It's not just the feed into the SHSAT. It's just an overall snapshot picture where that's going to assess you at some shape or form what you were able to accomplish over that school year. Okay? So you also want those things to be happening. So you need to be looking at prep material. You need to be thinking about it. You should probably be hiring a tutor, hi y'all, and so on. And when the DOE finally makes a statement, this is what's going to happen, this is not what's going to happen, this is what's going to change, just listen up. And by that point, you're going to be able to adapt. As you can see, they can't even tell us if school's going to be happening next month. So they're not going to make a decision about the SHSAT now. It's probably going to be postponed, probably over the summer. And if things don't get better, then it's going to be delayed even further. If things seem to recuperate and the economic things come back and the this illness situation rectifies itself to some reasonable extent and so on, then they may start making announcements about what's going to happen. In the meantime, you just can't sit around and twiddle your thumbs. You have to make a conscious decision about some of this. All right? So you should be starting to consider your prep now, today. Okay? And as I say in point number F on the screen, this is no picnic. This is not a good situation for anybody, not for the teachers, not for the DOE, not for the students, not even for tutors. But on the flip side, this was always a challenging situation. Always a challenging situation. I'd like to go back to point A here, though, which is that a lot of students make an error when they're preparing for a standardized test, especially for the SHSAT, which is that they often over-prepare for it. Make sure you understand what the SHSAT is about, what it's asking you to do, what it's not asking you to do. A lot of students will start using material that's not going to be ever asked on for the SHSAT, and they over-prepare. And in some ways, they're smarter than the test then. The problem in doing that is that they leapfrogged over the core stuff. They leapfrogged over even SHSAT prep, and they're somewhere else on the other side. They leapfrogged twice over stuff, and they're testing on something so advanced that it's harder to test for and prep for and study for. In the meantime, they should have been making sure they were rigorous in their core issues and in the things the SHSAT's asking you to do. So that's really important, guys. All right, so please feel free to contact me. Again, I'm Greg from GregsTutoringNYC at gmail.com. I encourage you to subscribe to this. I'm going to be posting other live streams about this. I also encourage you to email me. I encourage you to contact me about being a tutor for your student. All right, I've been doing this for decades. I'm well aware of all these tests. They're very confusing, very challenging. I've done hundreds of these tests personally myself. I haven't taken them live, but I've used all the practice materials, done hundreds and hundreds of these tests. So feel comfortable in what I'm trying to communicate to you guys. And I wish you guys a great day, and peace out.